My boyfriend Mark fell for a thief. He didn't just let her go after she broke into our home. He wanted to give her a job at his company. I told him he was being naive, that he was inviting trouble into our lives. The moment I said it, the girl burst into tears, ran into the street, and was killed by a passing car. After that, Mark never brought her up again. We went ahead with our wedding as planned, and for a while, everything felt normal, just like it was before. We were happy. But then, when I was 10 months pregnant and about to give birth, he wouldn't take me to the hospital. He just let me wait and wait until both our baby and I were gone. Now you might understand the kind of pain Chloe felt. When my eyes opened again, I was back on that day, the day she broke into our apartment. Before Mark could say a word, I forced a smile and said, "This girl looks like she's been through a lot. Why don't I just pack my things and let her stay here instead?" I remember lying in a pool of my own blood, my hand weakly reaching for Mark, but he just stood there watching me from a distance. His face was cold, impassive, as I fought to stay alive. I had never seen him look at me like that before. When the contractions started, I had called him right away. He promised he was on his way back to take me to the hospital and told me to just wait for him at home. So I never called for an ambulance. I was drenched in a cold sweat, my teeth chattering from the intense waves of pain. But I held on, believing he would be there soon. I trusted him. I never imagined that when he finally walked through the door, he would have no intention of helping me at all. My water had already broken. I needed to get to a hospital immediately for the delivery. Otherwise, the baby was at risk of suffocating. "Honey, what's wrong with you?" I managed to ask, my voice barely a whisper, completely drained by the pain. Mark just watched me, a slow, cruel smile spreading across his face as if he were enjoying my suffering. After a long moment, he finally spoke, his tone dripping with malice. "What's the hurry? You haven't even bled as much as Chloe did." Chloe? It took me a second to place the name, a name I hadn't thought about in years. Suddenly, a heavy, cold dread filled me. My whole body went numb. It was such an absurd thought. I had always believed he was just being soft-hearted back then, that he pitied the thief and wanted to offer her some help. I never, ever suspected that he had been in love with her. I had known him since we were teenagers. I was with him when he started his business from nothing. Our entire history, more than 10 years together, meant less to him than a girl he'd just met. The marriage I thought was so perfect was just a long, elaborate trap he had set to get revenge on me. "Mark," I pleaded, "the baby in my belly is yours." He grabbed my chin, his grip tight. "You always looked down on her, didn't you? A vicious woman like you doesn't deserve to have my child." In that moment, all hope I had for him vanished. I only wanted to save myself. I started to crawl towards the front door, desperate, but he stepped on my back, pinning me to the floor. Now do you understand Chloe's pain? I died with a heart full of overwhelming hatred, wishing for nothing more than a chance to do it all over again, to stay as far away from those two as I possibly could. When I opened my eyes, I was standing at the entrance to my own home. It was real. Mark was right beside me, turning the key in the lock. As the door swung open, we saw her, Chloe, inside, frantically looking for a place to hide. I was back, just like in my previous life. Mark rushed forward, grabbing her by the wrist. "Who are you?" he demanded. Chloe, trembling with fear, stammered with tears in her eyes. "I'm Chloe." Mark froze, his expression softening instantly. Who would have thought a thief would give her real name? He must have found it endearingly naive. "What are you doing in my house?" "I was so hungry," she sobbed. "I just wanted to find something to eat." Tears streamed down her face, and Mark's resolve completely melted. "This is the 3rd floor. How did you even get in?" "I climbed up from the balcony," Chloe cried. "I'm so sorry. I was wrong. I'll never do it again." Mark's tone grew stern, but it was laced with concern. "Are you crazy?" With just those few sentences, he was completely captivated. I realized now how blind I had been in my past life. Back then, my first instinct was to check if anything was missing and call the police. Mark had stopped me, insisting she was just a hungry girl who hadn't taken anything important. Later, however, I discovered that a set of my mother's jewelry, a family heirloom passed down from my grandmother, was gone from the back of my closet. It wasn't priceless, but it was unique and irreplaceable. When I told Mark, he brushed it off, suggesting I had probably just forgotten where I put it. Not long after, I found the exact set for sale on a secondhand website. I bought it back, confirming it was mine, and wanted to report it to the police immediately. But Mark accused me of making a big deal out of nothing. He transferred some money into my account and told me to be more forgiving. Thinking about it now, it was so obvious he was already completely lost to her. In his mind, everything Chloe did was justifiable. He's even said that not everyone had it as easy as I did, that I was ignorant of real-life hardships. I wasn't. When I was helping Mark start his business, I lived in a basement apartment with him and once drank so much with clients that I ended up with a stomach hemorrhage. But because my parents had raised me in a comfortable home, I was labeled as spoiled. Compared to Chloe, who supposedly grew up in an orphanage, this became a permanent point of contention for Mark, something he held against me, something that ultimately made him capable of orchestrating my death with his own two hands. Pulling myself from the flood of memories, I watched the two of them staring at each other, a clear connection already forming between them. I walked over calmly, reached into Chloe's bulging pocket, and pulled out my jewelry. My movements were so swift she didn't have time to react. When Mark finally registered what was happening, his gaze flickered from the jewelry in my hand to Chloe, and his expression turned sour. Seeing her true colors right after he'd just been charmed was a much different experience than finding out after he was already deeply in love. Before I could say a single word, Chloe dropped to her knees in front of me, crying hysterically. "Sister, I'm so sorry. I was just so hungry, I wasn't thinking straight. I made a mistake. Please don't call the police. I promise I'll never ever do it again." She then started banging her head on the floor, over and over. It was the exact same dramatic performance as last time. Mark's face was filled with pity. He frowned at me, his displeasure obvious. "You didn't lose anything in the end. Don't be so harsh." I couldn't help but sneer. In my previous life, when I hadn't found the stolen items on her, I was the one insisting on calling the police, and they both ganged up on me. One playing the victim, the other blaming me. This time, I had caught her red-handed, and I hadn't even said anything, yet he was already scolding me. I let out a short, contemptuous laugh. "Are you blind or are you deaf?" Mark's expression turned to one of pure shock. He couldn't comprehend how I could ever speak to him so rudely. I looked down at Chloe, whose forehead was now red and swollen from her performance. "What am I being harsh about? I never said I was going to call the police." Facing their confused expressions, I continued, "This poor girl is so pitiful, and I think we should just let her live here." No matter how foolish Mark was, he hadn't lost his mind to the point of agreeing to that. He clearly thought I was making a cruel joke, and his face darkened several shades. "Anna, do you find other people's misfortune amusing? I never realized you were such a cold and selfish person." I didn't want to waste my breath arguing with him. I went straight into the bedroom, pulled out my suitcase, and started to pack. Mark followed me in, grabbing my arm so forcefully that I nearly lost my balance. "What is all this about?" he demanded, trying to keep his anger in check as he let me go. I looked at him coldly. Anna knows her limits. In the middle of our argument, we heard a dull thud from the living room. Mark immediately released me and ran out, his face etched with worry. I stood in the bedroom doorway and saw Chloe collapsed on the floor, clutching her stomach and groaning in pain, and just like last time, she was having a stomach ache. Without a moment's hesitation, Mark scooped her up into his arms. He glanced back at me, a flicker of awkwardness on his face, but all he said was, "I'm taking her to the hospital." Then he rushed out, holding Chloe without a second look back. When I had witnessed that scene in my past life, I was just stunned. As a normal person, I couldn't wrap my head around the idea that someone would fall in love at first sight with a thief who had just broken into their home. When Mark came back later, he explained that seeing Chloe reminded him of his own difficult past. I knew he was an orphan and had once been so hungry he'd stolen corn from a field and was chased by dogs. He was my first love, and we had been together for so many years. So, in my past life, I chose to believe his story. Now, while they were gone at the hospital, I quickly finished packing my bags, grabbed my suitcase, and checked into a hotel. It had all happened so suddenly, and I didn't want to worry my parents by moving back home without an explanation. I figured I would tell them about the breakup slowly. As it turned out, there were several real estate agencies right near the hotel. After dropping off my things, I decided to go have a look and find a new place to live right away. However, just as I stepped out of the elevator into the hotel lobby, I ran into someone completely unexpected. As we passed each other, we both stopped dead in our tracks, staring in disbelief before speaking at the same time. Anna? Leo? Why are you here? He asked, looking genuinely surprised. Where's Mark? Leo was a high school classmate and, in many ways, Mark's biggest rival. Mark had always been a top student, but Leo was always just a little bit better. On every exam, Leo would be ranked first and Mark would be second. When Mark played basketball, a crowd of girls would gather to watch, but as soon as someone shouted that Leo was coming, the crowd would immediately abandon Mark and rush to see Leo instead. Mark really disliked Leo, but he always blamed his own inability to surpass him on the fact that Leo came from a wealthy family while he was just a poor orphan. At the time, I was in the same class as Mark, so we were naturally closer. I saw how hard he worked and sometimes felt that life wasn't fair to him. Leo was in the class next door, so I never really interacted with him much. But surprisingly, when Mark and I got married, Leo had someone send a generous gift. And on the back of the red envelope were 3 simple words: "Wish her happiness." I had wanted to get in touch with him to return the gesture, but Mark stopped me, angry. He claimed Leo wasn't really our friend and was just trying to show off his wealth, so there was no need to acknowledge it. "What happened to you?" Leo asked softly, noticing that I was just staring at the floor, lost in thought. I shook my head, about to say something, when an angry shout cut through the lobby. "Anna, what are you doing?" I turned to see Mark storming towards me. He grabbed my shoulders, shaking me so hard I stumbled. Leo reacted instantly, steadying me with one hand while grabbing Mark's wrist with the other. Mark yelped in pain and let go, his eyes bloodshot as he glared at us. "What are you two doing in a hotel?" he spat. "So this is it, Anna? No wonder you were so eager to move out. It was for him, wasn't it?" I raised my hand and slapped him hard across the face. "Watch your mouth." Mark's face twisted with a hatred so intense it shocked me. Leo stepped between us, his voice calm and cold. "This hotel is owned by my family." Mark was rendered speechless. He had never bothered to keep in touch with our old classmates and had actively discouraged me from doing so. So, of course, he had no idea what Leo was doing now. Even though Mark could now afford the presidential suite in this 5-star hotel chain, he was still nothing compared to Leo. Not wanting to cause any more trouble for Leo, I spoke up. "I just checked in. I came down and ran into him less than 5 minutes ago." Then I glanced at Chloe, who was standing timidly behind Mark. "And what are you doing in a hotel?" Mark's face darkened with impatience. "She has nowhere else to go. I'm letting her stay here for a few days. Now, come back with me. Stop making a scene." I sneered. "Are you some kind of saint? A thief breaks into your house and instead of calling the police, you take her to the hospital and then check her into a 5-star hotel. Why don't you just build a temple for yourself and sit in it?" Mark's expression shifted through several shades of anger and embarrassment, but he refused to back down. "Do you have to be so cruel? Don't people like you, who've never known hardship, have any sympathy at all?" Chloe's eyes immediately reddened as she clung to his arm. "Brother Mark, please don't fight with my sister because of me. I don't want to come between you two." As she spoke, she bit her lip and shot a shy, hopeful glance at Leo. Suddenly, Leo's expression changed as if he remembered something. "Your name is Chloe, right?" Chloe's eyes lit up. "Yes, my name is Chloe. Do you know me, brother?" Leo didn't answer her. Instead, he calmly called for security while saying, "Yes, I do. Last month at our store in the Kujang district, you stole a set of silver handicrafts." Chloe's face went completely pale, and she looked desperately to Mark for help. Mark looked as though he'd been punched in the gut, his face a mask of disbelief and horror. "Leo, are you just trying to cause trouble?" By then, several security guards had surrounded them. Leo said calmly, Just ask her yourself. You'll know the truth. Mark turned to Chloe, searching for confirmation. Her mouth trembled and tears started to fall. I. She couldn't form a coherent sentence. Mark's face grew darker and darker, a mixture of profound embarrassment and shame. Leo explained faintly. At the time, we found out she was just a part-time worker and very young, so we decided not to press charges. But since we've run into each other again so coincidentally, we might as well resolve it now. He paused, then added, looking directly at Mark. After all, people like me who don't know the hardships of the world have no sympathy. He was throwing Mark's own words right back in his face. It was perfect. Leo was like my own personal spokesman. I had to stop myself from cheering out loud. Mark was completely speechless, looking like he'd swallowed something foul. Chloe stepped forward to grab Leo's arm, but he nimbly sidestepped her. She missed and turned back to beg Mark. Brother Mark, please, you have to save me. I only did it because my life has been so hard. I promise I'll listen to you from now on. I'll never make a mistake like that again. Mark was clearly torn, but still asked, how much was the item worth? Leo took out his phone, pulled up the product page, and showed it to him. It's a set of handmade silver crafts by a master silversmith. It's worth 100,000 wien. Mark's expression froze. He could certainly afford that amount, but his money hadn't come easily. The interesting thing was, when Chloe heard the price, I saw her mouth twitch. My own set of jewelry was worth about the same, but when I found it on the secondhand site, I bought it back for only 20,000 yuan. I guessed she had no idea what she was stealing and sold it for far less than it was worth. But now, Mark was on the hook for the full retail price. The thought of it made me incredibly happy. Mark, caught in a difficult position, turned his anger on me. Anna, what are you smirking about? I offered him a sincere suggestion. If you don't want to pay, you can always just let them call the police. His face flushed a deep red, and he started blaming Leo again. Can't you see he's just a petty, narrow-minded person? I was about to laugh out loud. Really? I don't believe it. Mark looked at me, his disappointment palpable. Do you really want to be with someone like him? We're both people who don't know the hardships of the world. Didn't you say that yourself? Mark was so furious, his eyes looked like they were about to pop out of his head, and he clenched his fists. All the while, Chloe was looking at him with pleading eyes. Under her expectant gaze, Mark had no choice but to take out his card and pay the 100,000 yuan for her. After the transaction was complete, he shot me a vicious glare and, as if to deliberately provoke me, took Chloe's hand and said, "Let's go home." I couldn't help but roll my eyes. As they left, my gaze met Leo's. I quickly composed my expression, but he was clearly amused. "Leo, thank you," I said, genuinely grateful. He just smiled and shook his head. I had to admit, he was far more handsome than Mark. By the way, I suddenly remembered something. In my previous life, someone had anonymously sent me a portable hard drive. It contained photos and videos of Chloe secretly following Mark at a reception. The timestamp on the files showed that this was before she ever broke into our house. This meant she hadn't just randomly chosen our home. She had been targeting Mark from the beginning. Back then, I was in such a rush to find Mark and show him the evidence. But as soon as I got to his office, he announced that he was giving Chloe a full-time position at the company and wanted me to personally train her. Overwhelmed and angry, I blurted out, "Come to your senses. Don't invite a wolf into the house." After Chloe overheard me, she ran straight out of the building and into a busy street where she was hit by a car. I couldn't stop her. After she died, Mark refused to even mention her name. I also felt that one should respect the dead, so I never brought it up again. And eventually, I forgot all about the hard drive. Now, thinking back, could it have been Leo who sent it to me? I decided to test my theory and asked him tentatively, was Mark also at that reception where Chloe was? He nodded. When we were reviewing the security footage afterward, I happened to be nearby and saw them both, he said. So he knew Chloe had been stalking Mark back then. Leo hesitated for a moment before asking, "Should I have someone make a copy of the footage for you?" I waved my hands. "No, it's fine. One is willing to pursue, and the other is willing to be caught. We two who lack sympathy shouldn't get involved. He was amused by my response again. He was truly dazzling when he smiled. Besides him, I couldn't think of anyone else who would have sent me that hard drive in my past life. But it seemed strange as we weren't that close, and he had no obvious reason to do so. However, that point in time hadn't arrived yet in this life. I figured I would find out the truth when the time came. Leo was there for a meeting, so I didn't want to keep him any longer. We said our goodbyes and exchanged contact information. He told me to reach out if I needed anything, though I thought it was unlikely I would trouble him again. I went to a real estate agency and picked out an agent named Seaway, who took me to see several available apartments right away. I was happy with one of them and wanted to sign the contract as quickly as possible to get it over with. Seaway mentioned that the owner lived next door and suggested we see if he was home. The moment we stepped out, we saw Leo opening the door to the apartment right next to the one I wanted to rent. He looked up, saw me, and we both froze, stunned. Agent Seaway, oblivious to our history, greeted him cheerfully. "Mr. Leo, you're back. What a coincidence. This lady wants to rent your apartment." Just like that, things fell into place so perfectly it felt unreal. I became Leo's neighbor, living in a property he owned. He insisted on driving me to the hotel to pick up my luggage. I was in a daze the entire time. After helping me move my bags into the apartment, he came back over with a bag of groceries. He explained that since no one had lived in the house before, it was good luck to cook a meal with friends on the first day to prosper the house and ensure a good life ahead. Watching him wash vegetables in my new kitchen, it all felt so surreal. Just that morning, we were practically strangers, and now he was calling us friends. He must have noticed my staring because he paused what he was doing and asked with a gentle smile, "Am I bothering you?" "No," I said, telling the truth. "I just think it's all so amazing. I never thought I'd meet you again like this. What a coincidence." "Me too," he replied with a bright smile. "Anna, it's nice to meet you." For some reason, I felt my cheeks grow warm. At that moment, the buzz of a text message broke the quiet atmosphere. I glanced at my phone and saw a series of photos sent from an unknown number. In the pictures, Chloe was wearing a pair of my pajamas that I had left behind, posing in front of the mirror. The message read, "Sister, won't you be angry if I wear your pajamas?" I typed back, "I used those to wipe the toilet, which is why I didn't take them with me." She didn't reply after that. The truth was, when I was packing, I felt disgusted just looking at that particular set of pajamas, so I left them. In my previous life, after Mark took Chloe to the hospital, I thought that would be the end of our interactions with her. But a few days later, I came home to find Chloe in my house, brazenly wearing those same pajamas. I was so furious that I slapped her. Mark happened to walk in at that exact moment and immediately shielded Chloe behind him, who was already crying. He said it had nothing to do with her, that he had given her permission to come over and take a bath, and that if I had a problem, I should take it out on him. So I slapped him twice and demanded to know what he was doing and if he had fallen in love with the thief. If he had just admitted it then, I would have walked away. But he denied everything, told me not to say such absurd things, and insisted he only felt sorry for her. He made Chloe leave and then apologized profusely to me, pretending he was still completely devoted to me. The main reason I chose to believe him back then was that I couldn't imagine someone as proud as Mark falling for a common thief without any principles. It turned out I had seriously overestimated his character. "Are you okay?" Leo's voice brought me back to the present. Hearing him, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. I shook my head. "If you need my help with anything, just let me know," he said. "Why are you helping me?" I asked. I genuinely wanted to know. He didn't seem to expect the question. He lowered his eyes, thought for a moment, and then answered, "Because you're a good person." It was such a simple, almost childish answer. Why was he so kind? I was still reeling from his gentle nature when my phone rang again, pulling me out of my thoughts. It was Mark. The moment I answered, he demanded angrily, "When are you coming back? Haven't you caused enough trouble?" "I forgot to tell you officially," I said calmly. "We're breaking up. Don't contact me again." After hanging up, I blocked his number. Finally, I was able to enjoy a peaceful dinner with Leo. The next day, I went to my old company to handle my resignation. To my surprise, Chloe was there too. The moment Mark saw me, he sneered. "Didn't you say we were breaking up? Didn't you say not to contact each other? Why are you back? Did you regret it already? Since Chloe is also here, you should apologize to her. Then admit you were wrong to me, and I'll pretend none of this ever happened." Chloe chimed in, fanning the flames. "Sister, I know you don't like me, but I don't hold it against you. However, you were very disrespectful to Brother Mark yesterday. If you want him to forgive you, you need to admit your mistake and apologize." I simply walked past both of them and headed for the personnel department. Mark continued to shout after me. "What's with your attitude? Where do you think you're going?" "I'm going to see the HR manager," I said, turning to the manager. "Please help me process my resignation." The office fell silent. Once Mark fully understood what I was doing, he grabbed my wrist tightly. "What did you just say? Say it again." I ignored him and repeated to the HR manager, "Please help me with the resignation paperwork as soon as possible." Mark lunged at the HR manager like a wild animal. "Don't you dare process it for her." I leaned in and whispered softly in his ear, "Are you that reluctant to let go of my father's business connections?" In my past life, he didn't love me but insisted on staying with me. After thinking it over, that was the only reason I could come up with. My entire family worked in foreign trade, and many of the company's long-term advertising design clients were people I had introduced through my father. Mark looked as if he'd been deeply insulted. "Do you really look down on me that much?" he said through gritted teeth. I shook my head, tired of the drama. "I just don't want to see you ever again." His chest heaved with anger for a moment, and then he spat out, "Don't you regret this?" before slamming the door on his way out. I successfully completed my resignation. From that day on, I had absolutely no connection to Mark. I had no desire for revenge. I didn't want to waste another second of my life on such a pathetic man. I had done what I needed to do, and now I just wanted to live my own life. But sometimes you can't avoid running into people you'd rather not see. One day, I was coming out of the convenience store near my apartment building when the heel of my shoe snapped. I twisted my ankle, and the shopping bags I was carrying fell, scattering their contents all over the sidewalk. Just as I was about to bend down and pick everything up, I heard Chloe's shrill voice. "Sister, what are you doing here? Are you working at the convenience store now?" I turned my head and saw Mark and Chloe walking towards me. Chloe was dressed in a sharp business suit, and I had to admit they looked like a well-matched pair. It seemed that in this life, Mark had brought her into the company much sooner. Her eyes darted down to my feet, and she exclaimed with fake sympathy, "Oh, sister, the quality of your shoes is so poor. Brother Mark just bought me a new pair. Here, you can have my old ones." She held out a paper bag towards me, a proud, smug smile on her face. I glanced at Mark. A flicker of discomfort crossed his face, but he went along with Chloe's act. "She's being kind. Just take them and wear them." I sneered and gestured towards the bag in Chloe's hand with my chin. "Take them out. Let me have a look." Chloe happily pulled out a pair of worn shoes and showed them to me. "I know this style is more for young people and might not suit your age, but you can still wear them." I gave them a quick look and then said to Mark, "They're a bit dirty. I'll wear them if you lick them clean." Mark's eyes widened in anger. I looked at Chloe with mock surprise. "He's actually not willing to do it. He must think you're dirty." Chloe was completely stunned, unsure how to react. Just then, Leo happened to be returning home. He quietly gathered all the items I had dropped and then squatted down in front of me. He turned his head and smiled. "Come on, I'll carry you." That snapped Mark out of his stupor. He pointed a shaking finger at Leo, his voice full of rage. "What are you doing here? Why are you two always showing up together?" I saw the cleaning lady nearby, so I kicked off my broken shoes and called out to her, "Ma'am, could you please help me throw these away?" She nodded that it was no problem. I sighed dramatically. Who keeps old shoes anyway? Then, I climbed onto Leo's strong, lean back. He easily lifted me and started walking towards our apartment building. Mark followed behind us, shouting impotently, "Get down from there! Are you crazy? Where are you going with him? As Leo carried me into the community, I heard the security guard stopping Mark and Chloe at the gate. Why can they go in? Mark yelled. The guard replied calmly. They're residents here. What's your business? Mark immediately fell silent. We're here to see clients, he muttered. The guard was firm. Outsiders are not allowed to enter without permission. A smile spread across my face. The noise behind me gradually faded away. In my world, there was only the warmth radiating from Leo's back and the fresh, clean scent of his shirt. I told my parents about the breakup with Mark, and they were both incredibly supportive. After Mark found out I was living next to Leo, he began calling me frantically from different numbers. It was then that I realized there was a truly obsessive and extreme side to his personality. In sharp contrast, Leo was always emotionally stable, reserved, and considerate. For instance, I found an unopened projector in my TV cabinet one day. I went next door to ask Leo if I could use it to watch a movie. Of course, he said, and then asked if he could watch with me. Of course, I replied. Our interactions felt simple and easy, like we were back in high school. I chose the movie Coco, which tells the story of how departed souls can continue to exist as long as someone living remembers them. There's a line in it. Best wishes without any strings attached. Suddenly, I remembered the red envelope Leo had sent for my wedding in my previous life. I turned to him and asked, Leo, if I were to get married, what would you say to me? He seemed deeply immersed in the movie, and his eyes were a little moist when he looked at me. His gaze was very deep. I would say, wish you happiness. A wild, unbelievable guess was on the tip of my tongue, but I didn't have the courage to ask. After a few days of peace, Chloe managed to block my path at the entrance of my apartment complex. The moment she saw me, she launched into an angry tirade. Anna, the company is in trouble. Are you just going to hide here and do nothing about it? I was confused. What happened? A lot of people are jointly suing the company for plagiarism. Mark is overwhelmed dealing with this mess, and you don't even know about it. I just sneered. Why should I, a former employee, know or care about the affairs of my old company? She glared at me. I know you're just jealous that brother Mark is so good to me, so you've come to hate him out of spite. But it's useless. It will only make him dislike you more. If you want him to take you back, you should do it the right way. I asked with genuine curiosity, and what's the right way? Obviously, you should get your father to solve his current problems and then publicly apologize to both of us, she said with an air of self-righteousness. What an ungrateful person. I didn't want to waste another word on her and started to walk away. Where are you going? Stop. Chloe lunged forward to grab me. I slapped her hand away. My clothes are very expensive. You can't afford to replace them if you get them dirty. Chloe covered her face horrified and then screamed in a tearful voice, Brother Mark! Before I could even react, Mark's hand was swinging towards my face. I instinctively dodged and another person suddenly appeared in front of me. Leo had firmly caught Mark's wrist. He turned his head to me and asked, Are you okay? My eyes grew hot. Why are you back so early? He looked a bit shy. Today is my birthday. Just that one sentence made my heart pound. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Mark about to swing at Leo with his other hand. I quickly kicked him hard between the legs. He groaned and doubled over, clutching himself. Chloe shrieked like a terrified bird, Brother Mark! Leo used the opportunity to shove Mark towards her. Get lost, he said. It was the first time I had ever heard him swear, and it sounded incredibly attractive. Mark, supported by Chloe, glared at me with pure venom in his eyes. I walked up to him and slapped him hard twice. I've told you I don't want to see you again. Stop bringing your bad luck around me. Then, thinking about how they always seem to ruin my good moments with Leo, I gave each of them another slap for good measure. After being hit 3 times, most of the fierce malice drained from Mark's face. He just asked blankly, Do you hate me that much? I turned my back on him, took Leo's arm, and walked away. I thought Leo had come back early to take me out for birthday dinner, but instead he took me to our old high school. The security guard recognized him and let us in without any questions. I followed him across the playground, past the main teaching building to a large tree behind the school library. He stopped, sighed softly, and opened his hand, showing me something resting in his palm. It was a small glass rabbit. My mind was instantly pulled back years and years ago. I had seen a glass rabbit just like it sitting by the cash register in the stationery store near our school. It was exquisitely carved and so beautiful. I had pointed at it and asked the owner about it, but he had rudely cut me off. Not for sale, don't touch it. I remember pulling my hand back disappointed. After that, every time I went into the store, I would just stand there and admire it for a few moments. Then one day, it was gone. I had even asked my father to buy me similar ones, but none were ever as perfect as that first one. I picked up the glass rabbit from Leo's hand. It was the exact same one from my memory, still warm from his touch. "How did you know I liked this?" I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. "I thought it wasn't for sale." He smiled. "I begged the owner for a long time. Eventually, he got so annoyed with me that he finally sold it." My ears felt hot. "Why?" He looked down at the rabbit, a hint of sadness in his eyes. 10 years ago today, I planned to give this to the 17-year-old Anna. 10 years ago today. If I remembered correctly, that was the day Mark had confessed his love to me. During the afternoon break, he had suddenly presented me with a ring woven from dogtail grass and asked me to be his girlfriend with this intense, burning look in his eyes. I was confused but knew he had a fragile ego. So instead of rejecting him outright, I just said, "Let's talk about it after graduation." He took that as a yes and excitedly announced to everyone that we were together. At the time, other boys were pursuing me, and I figured it was an easy way to get them to leave me alone, so I never bothered to correct the story. Later, he followed me to the same university, and it was 2 years after that, moved by his persistence and hard work, that I finally agreed to be with him. Leo's voice was calm as he continued. "That day, I was practicing my confession right here. I wanted to tell you, Anna, I like you. I want to go to the same university as you after the entrance exams. Will you be my girlfriend?" I don't know when Mark showed up, but as soon as he saw that I'd spotted him, he ran off. Soon after, I heard that you two were together. He even came up to me deliberately to show off and told me to stay away from you. My head was buzzing. In that moment, all I wanted to do was find that bastard Mark and throttle him. On the way back, Leo was driving, and I couldn't stop turning my head to look at him. My heart was a mess of conflicting emotions. That was Leo, my Leo. How could I have let him be bullied by someone like Mark because of me? "What are you thinking about?" he asked gently. I had so much I wanted to say that I didn't know where to begin. After a long silence, I finally managed to say, "But today is your birthday. What if I didn't get you a gift?" He didn't say anything, but the smile on his face grew wider, and the tips of his ears turned a little red. I thought about it, and there was actually one thing I could give him as a gift. It was just really embarrassing. To my surprise, as soon as we got back to the apartment, he handed me a stack of documents. "What's this?" "My physical examination report," he said, "as well as my real estate deeds and my bank statements." I looked at him, completely blank. He leaned in closer, his warm breath brushing against my cheek. "I've liked you for 10 years. Will you marry me?" It felt like fireworks were exploding in my heart. "Yes." I threw my arms around him, hugging him tightly. Right then, I wanted nothing more than to give him my gift immediately and passionately. The next day, I woke up in Leo's arms. It took a full week before I felt ready to venture outside again. In my previous life, Mark was the kind of person who would do anything to achieve his goals. I was often the one who stopped him from taking things too far. In this life, with no one to restrain him, it wasn't surprising that he ended up in a lawsuit over plagiarism. But I knew that was nothing. His real trouble, the big one, was still coming. That day arrived sooner than I expected. News broke online that a massive amount of customer data from his company had been leaked, pushing the company to the brink of collapse. In my previous life, that data leak had originated from my computer. Mark had been furious with me, and I had no way to explain what had happened. In the end, my elderly father had to use his own money and connections to clean up the mess. One day, The police had informed us that they had hired experts to recover all the operation logs from my computer, and it was only a matter of time before they found the person responsible for the leak. The very next day, I received that anonymous hard drive. I took it to find Mark, wanting to tell him I suspected Chloe was the one who had leaked the data. But at that critical moment, he chose to announce that he was officially hiring Chloe. In my panic, I had urged him to reconsider, not to invite a wolf into his house. That's when Chloe ran out and was hit by the car. When the investigation results finally came out, it was confirmed that Chloe had come to the company to visit, secretly used my computer, and leaked the customer information. All Mark had said was, "She's already dead. Why bring it up?" With my father's resources backing him, he could afford to be magnanimous. During the week I spent recovering in Leo's bed, I had already introduced my parents to their new prospective son-in-law via video call. The old couple was so thrilled with Leo that they couldn't stop smiling. A few days later, however, I heard that Chloe was dead. An employee from Mark's company posted online that Chloe had been madly in love with Mark and had committed suicide because she couldn't have him. When I received a call from Mark from an unknown number, I had just finished a workout with Leo. From the very first thing he said, I knew he had been reborn too. "Let's meet. I want to tell you what happened later." I knew exactly what he was talking about. "There's no need," I said. I wanted nothing to do with him, in this life or the last. But he knew my weakness. "Don't you want to know what happened to Leo?" I turned to look at Leo beside me. He was lying on his side, propping his head up with one hand, his elbow resting on the pillow. He had a slight smile on his lips, and his eyes were full of me. I reached out and gently stroked his eyelashes. He caught my hand, kissed it, and then pressed his face against my palm. "Okay," I said into the phone. I knew my parents were resilient. They would have supported each other and lived on after losing me. But I had to know what had become of Leo. When Leo found out I was going to meet Mark, he didn't say a word, but he made sure I was so exhausted I had to stay in bed for another week. I hadn't seen him in a while, and Mark looked like he had aged 10 years. The confident, ambitious man was gone, replaced by someone who looked weary and haunted by the past. We agreed to meet in a small pavilion in the park near his apartment. It was practically deserted. I sat down across from him. He stared at a couple walking their dog in the distance, his eyes red-rimmed. "We used to walk here all the time," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "If only I could have come back sooner." "Get to the point," I interrupted, my patience thin. He was silent for a few seconds before continuing, his voice trembling. "After you died, I saw her again." I wasn't surprised to hear him say her name. When I had heard the news of her suicide a while back, I already suspected something was off. In both lives, she had died just before the police could conclude their investigation into the data leak. "If I told you that I was also a victim, would you forgive me?" he asked, looking at me with desperate hope. I was too tired to respond and just gestured for him to continue. "I hired a private detective to investigate her," he said. "She was part of a large fraud and theft ring. They had people inside the hospital, inside our company, and I was their target. The first time she broke into our house was just an act to get close to me. The customer data was sold to a rival company for a high price. After she completed the job, she wanted to disappear, so she deliberately sent you that hard drive to make you suspect her. When you rushed over and confronted us, it gave her the perfect opportunity to fake her death and make me believe you were responsible." As he spoke, 2 lines of tears streamed down his face. They were afraid I would uncover the truth, so her accomplices in the company were secretly putting mind-altering drugs in my coffee for a long time. They made sure I lived in a constant state of guilt over her death. By that day, my mental state was already very fragile. "Anna, I'm so sorry." He was sobbing uncontrollably, but my heart remained unmoved. I only cared about one thing. "What about Leo?" He let out a bitter laugh. "He came to your funeral, he beat me up, then he went to a temple and became a monk." My nails dug into my palms, my throat tightening. Was he safe? He seemed stunned for a moment, then realized who I was asking about and smiled sadly to himself. Before I died, he was still alive. I nodded and stood up to leave. Anna! Mark called out eagerly, walking up to me, looking embarrassed. You might not believe this, but even though I was confused for a while, I really did love you. When I confessed to you back in high school, I was sincere. I looked at him with cold indifference. But you still stole from Leo. You're no different from Chloe. You're both thieves. His lips trembled, and he swayed on his feet. I turned and walked away. Anna! He called out one last time, not giving up. Don't you want to know about my aunt? I didn't turn back. The sooner you die, the better, I said without stopping. On the day Leo and I got married, we received a red envelope. On the back were 3 words. I am sorry. After the wedding, when we got home, I saw a news alert online. Mark had found the woman who had pretended to be his aunt, another member of the fraud ring. He had driven his car and hit her, then ran over her repeatedly. Afterward, he drove his car up a mountain road and steered it straight off a cliff. Both of them died at the scene. The police had received a detailed report from an anonymous source exposing the entire fraud gang and were launching a full-scale investigation. I cursed under my breath. What an unlucky thing to see on my wedding night. I tossed my phone aside, threw myself at Leo, and kissed his perfect nose. Husband, I whispered, for the rest of our lives, please teach me everything.